This is the newsroom for today, Wednesday, April 21, 2021. We're broadcasting to you on E1 Star TV, NTN, and Tarzi TV in Bartica. In the headlines, after 30 years, squatters at Great Diamond on the east bank of Demerara will receive their titles of ownership.
I gave directions for us to begin the process of regularization of that area.
The operations of a number of bars and resorts across Guyana were suspended by the National COVID-19 Task Force. The Chief Executive Officer of Gaisuco, Sesnarayan Singh, says the company is currently unable to finance the long-promised wage increases to sugar workers. And in sport, athletes' interest high for 2021 Allian Pompey Invitational, and Guyana preparing to host South American Under-23 Championship despite COVID uncertainty. With the news, I'm Avinash Ramzan. Thanks for joining us. We started by telling you that some 65 households currently occupying lands at Block D Plantation Great Diamond on the east bank of Demerara will soon receive titles of ownership for the lands which they have been occupying for the last 3 decades. Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, Susan Rodriguez, said the breakthrough comes after several attempts dating back to 2005 to have the squatters regularized. Kurt Campbell reports.
At the end of March 2021, the Ministry of Housing and Water, along with the Central Housing and Planning Authority, was notified that the National Industrial and Commercial Investment Limited (NICIL) has agreed to transfer the plot of land occupied by scores of squatters for which they have ownership. After all legal requirements are fulfilled, this paves the way for the Ministry and the CHNPA to move ahead with the regularization of the area which had been stalled for several years. Rodriguez told the newsroom during an interview at her office on Wednesday that it was part of our ambitious plan to not only ensure that applicants receive lands, but also those persons who have been living and have erected structures on unregularized plots of land receive proper documentation of ownership. Recalling the history of the issue at Plantation Great Diamond, the minister said the matter was brought to her attention by a resident recently.
I immediately inquired into the reason for that, and I realized that the Central Housing and Planning Authority did not have ownership of that land, and that area was unregularized. So I gave directions for us to begin the process of regularization of that area.
She said although there were efforts dating back to 2005 to have the area regularized, those efforts were stalled because the land was not owned by the Central Housing and Planning Authority.
So there were several technicalities over this time that prevented the process of regularization from being completed. And one of the disputes was that a portion of that land we subsequently found out belonged to DDL. And there were 3 squatters who were on the land owned by DDL. So we had a boundary dispute there. So what we did, that issue had to be sorted out first, and we had those 3 squatters relocated to Prospect.
At the beginning of 2021, NICIL was written to on a request to transfer the lands, which NICIL's boss, R.K. Sharma, subsequently agreed to. On March 25, 2021, Cabinet granted its no objection to the transfer. The minister now looks to fulfill legal requirements to finalize the transfer and move swiftly ahead with regularization.
We tell you now that the operations of a number of bars and resorts across Guyana were suspended by the National COVID-19 Task Force as the body upped its enforcement measures in a bid to reduce the spread of the deadly coronavirus. Vishani Raghuber reports.
The National COVID-19 Task Force issued suspension letters to several businesses across the country for breaching the gazetted COVID-19 guidelines in place to prevent the spread of the virus. The establishments that have been suspended include Hom Hospitality Hotel, Restaurant and Bar, which was suspended from April 7, 2021 to May 7, 2021. The Georgetown Softball Cricket League, Inc. was suspended from March 23rd. Everest Cricket Club was suspended from March 8. Club Altitude was suspended from April 9 to May 5. Kairos was suspended from April 9 to May 9th. Boathouse Sports Bar was suspended from April 13th to May 13. Magic City and Rio Nightclub were suspended from April 13 to May 13. The newsroom understands that approval for activities by the Georgetown Softball Cricket League Inc. and the Everest Cricket Club will be done on a case-by-case basis. Meanwhile, all future activities at the GMRNSC have been suspended. Though some businesses have been suspended for breaching the gazetted COVID-19 guidelines, some business owners have been lamenting the constraints presented by the pandemic. Javid Rahman, manager of the Altitude Cocktail Bar and Lounge, says that his business must find a way to adapt.
We don't open generally before 4 o'clock. So the hours of 4 to 9 o'clock, in most cases, for the lack of a better word, doesn't make sense. You know, with the amount of expenses and overheads that we have, sometimes those 4 to 5 hours just don't cut it, you know. So we're really missing the later off part of the night to make up for the majority of sales. We understand that it can't happen now, but economically it is making it harder on the business by not having those extra hours to play with. But one of the ideas that we have moving forward is to maybe try a lunch menu, you know, maybe open a little bit earlier, maybe from like 11 or midday, and then move into the evening, closing earlier, just to see if that can make up any bit of the loss from not being able to go later on into the night.
Vishani Raghavir reporting for The Newsroom.
Chief Executive Officer of the Guyana Sugar Corporation, Gaisuko, says Narayan Singh, says the company is currently unable to finance the long-promised wage increases to sugar workers as it does not have enough funds. His comments come on the heels of a week-long protest action by workers from the Albion, Blairmont, and Iflot sugar estates who are angry that the company is not addressing their concerns with earnest. Shakima Day reports.
While the Guyana Sugar Corporation is willing and ready to negotiate salary increases with aggrieved sugar workers from the Blairmont, Albion and Iflot estates, it simply cannot pay what it does not have. This is according to its current Chief Executive Officer, says Narayan Singh, who spoke with the newsroom on Wednesday. Sugar workers from the estates have been engaged in a week-long protest concerning protracted salary discussions that go back to 2019. And despite assurances from the Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa that the government would engage Gaisuko on workers' benefits, the protest continues.
This is an extremely sensitive issue, sensitive time in the industry. We're rebuilding an industry that was broken. And for you to do that, it requires a strategy, which the industry has already developed. It requires money, resources, which clearly Gaisuku has a shortage of.
According to the CEO, in 2020 alone, the sugar company made a loss of $3.8 billion, and the majority of its funding went towards wages and salaries. Added to that, Singh said that Guyana was producing sugar at an extremely higher cost than it was being sold. All of these factors, he stated, contribute to why Gaisuko is unable to dole out the needed increases. And while negotiations are a priority for the company, he said that Gaisuko cannot rush into it, as management is answerable to a board of directors and shareholders who play key roles in the decision-making process.
What I want to make very clear, the management of Gaisuku is committed to working with all stakeholders to make something happen. But we have to work with everyone else. We got to work with a board, we have to work with our shareholders, we have to work with the unions, we have to work with everyone in a collaborative way. And what I'm seeing is that there is a disconnect, that 102% of our revenue is spent on wages and salaries. And on top of that, you have the audacity to tell us that we're not trying our best. Where are we going to get more from? We've gone back to the books, and we're trying our best to squeeze something from somewhere, because we're committed to the workers.
Just 3 months after Gaisuko was allocated a sum of $3 billion, the government returned to the National Assembly on December 28, 2020, requesting an additional $4 billion. while the previous $3 billion was to recapitalize the 3 estates closed by the former APNU AFC government at Rose Hall, Skeldon and Enmore. The $4 billion was slated to support the recapitalization of the 3 opening estates at Blairmont, Albion and Iflot. Mustafa had told the National Assembly that because of the neglect, the 3 operating estates were subjected to, over the last 5 years, critical capital works had become necessary. Additionally, the 2021 national budget makes provisions for $2 billion for critical capital works at the estates. The government has started a process to reopen sugar estates closed by the former APNU AFC government. The APNU AFC government had closed estates at Wales on the west bank of Demerara, Rose Hall and Skeldon in Region 6, and Enmore, East Coast, Demerara. For the Newsroom, I am Shakima Day.
Former Commissioner of the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, Trevor Ben, was on Wednesday released on $100,000 bail after he was charged with the offense of misconduct in public office in relation to the illegal leasing of state lands to well-known businessman Wilfred Bransford for $13.5 million when it was valued at $60.8 million. Ben, aged 53 of Santry Palms Garden, Durban Backlands, appeared before Principal Magistrate Shardel Isaacs Marcus at the Georgetown Magistrates Court and was not required to plead to the charge. It is alleged that between December 1, 2018 and August 31, 2020, Ben willfully misconducted himself by executing a sale of 2 parcels of lands at Middlewalk Plantation, Rheinfeld, and causing Bransford to pay the sum of $13.5 million to the Commission for the said lands, knowing at the time he did not have the authority to sell the lands and knowing the plots had been earlier valued at a sum of $60.8 million. It is alleged that this amounts to willful misconduct resulting in a breach of the public's trust without any excuse or reasonable justification. Ben is being represented by attorney-at-law Mark Waldron, and the case is adjourned to May 28, 2021. According to reports, Bransford is the owner of Car Care and a former director of the Guyana Lands and Survey Commission. While sitting as a director, Bransford allegedly benefited from the sale of several undervalued lands. In March, Ben was arraigned in court for the offense of misconduct in public office in relation to the illegal leasing of state lands to an engineering company for $27 million. He was released on $200,000 bail for that offense, and the matter is currently before the Chief Magistrate, Anne McLennan. The Guyana Police Force says its intelligence-led strategies and constant operational activities have led to an overall decrease of 29.8% in serious crimes for 2021 when compared to the same period last year. There has been a 38.4% decrease in armed robberies where firearms were used by the perpetrators and a 47.7% decrease in armed robberies where other instruments were used. Murder has seen a 22.9% decrease, with 37 to date this year compared to 48 for the similar period last year, police headquarters noted in a statement on Wednesday. Additionally, the force said it is cognizant that criminal-minded persons have been riding motorcycles and bicycles in their robbery attacks on citizens, and as a response, extensive campaigns are ongoing in the police divisions to rein in and detain these vehicles and arrest persons where applicable. Already, this has resulted in a number of motorcycles and bicycles being detained and processed to determine lawful ownership, among other issues. Countrywide operations by the Force's Narcotics Department also have resulted in a total so far of 111 kilograms, 11.4 grams of cannabis, and 267.2 grams of cocaine being interdicted, the statement further added. When the newsroom returns, senior cops are slapped with more fraud charges and the construction works at Hunter Street is further delayed. This is the newsroom. A deputy commander and other senior officers of the Guyana Police Force were on Wednesday hauled before the Georgetown Magistrates Court to answer more charges of fraud instituted by the Special Organized Crime Unit, SOCU, in relation to the falsification of meal accounts at the Felix Austin Police College. More in this report from Shakima Day.
The Special Organized Crime Unit on Wednesday instituted more fraud charges against Police Finance Officer, woman Senior Superintendent Marceline Washington, former Deputy Finance Officer, Deputy Superintendent Frank Jackman Wilberg, and former Deputy Commander of Division 4B, woman Superintendent Lorraine Saul. While the three were jointly charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to commit a felony, Saul was charged separately with 2 counts of falsification of account by an officer. The case was called before the Chief Magistrate, Anne McLennan, at the Georgetown Magistrates Court. The case against Washington and Saul was adjourned to May 14, 2021, as they were not present in court on Wednesday. Only Jackman showed up, and both charges of conspiracy to commit a felony, contrary to Section 34 of the Criminal Law Offences Act, were read to him. However, he was not required to enter a plea to the indictable charge. He was then released on $150,000 bail, and the case was adjourned to May 14, 2021. On the conspiracy charges, reports are that the trio, with intent to defraud, conspired with each other and other persons, while being officers employed by the Guyana Police Force, to falsify the feeding account of the Felix Austin Police College on 2 occasions, once in the sum of $1.4 million, and then again in the sum of $2.2 million. Investigations by SOCO revealed that Saul, who was stationed at the Felix Austin Police College as an officer in charge, prepared 2 feeding accounts on November 2nd, 2020. Both accounts were for meals provided to ranks performing fixed-point duties at the Suicide Helpline and the Mountain Branch from October 16th to October 31st, 2020. The accounts were reportedly processed at the Police Finance Office, and the payment voucher was approved for the amounts listed, totaling in excess of $3.6 million. Further investigations discovered that Washington and Wilberg colluded with Saul to defraud as they authorized the payment when, in fact, no such duty existed, and the meals were not distributed to ranks as stated on the accounts. Additionally, 2 other officers, Special Corporal Janika Carmichael and Constable Tatiana Smith, were also on Wednesday hauled before the Georgetown Magistrates Court to answer to a charge of illegal data interference brought by SOCO. The duo also appeared before the Chief Magistrate Anne McLennan and entered not guilty pleas to the charge, contrary to Section 52A of the Cybercrime Act 2018. It is alleged by SOCO that the 2 women intentionally and without a lawful excuse or justification deleted electronic data from the Guyana Police Force computer that was in the administrative office of the Felix Austin Police College. A probe was launched by SOCO after information was received that falsified feeding accounts were stored on the computer. But before SOCO could have accessed the computer, all feeding account files were deleted, with the 2 accused being the only 2 ranks who operated the computer. Both women were granted $150,000 bail, and the matter was adjourned to May 6, 2021. They were represented by attorneys at law E. Stephen and Bernard De Silva, respectively. Shakima Day, reporting for the Newsroom.
2 men who led ranks of the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit KANU on a high-speed chase in Georgetown on Tuesday were arrested and reportedly found to be in possession of cocaine and marijuana. Daquan Wills, a 25-year-old of 141 Meadowbrook Drive, Georgetown, and 39-year-old Joel Fungafat of 342 Forshaw Street, Georgetown, and of a U.S. address are in police custody. The anti-drug agency, in a statement on Tuesday night, said that Wills was driving a maroon Nissan Duke PVV 6706, which Ranks had under surveillance. When Ranks attempted to interdict the said vehicle, it sped away and KANU gave chase and intercepted same at Landscape Street and Vicingen Road in Georgetown. It is alleged that during the chase, a brick of suspected cocaine was thrown from the vehicle, and the same was retrieved by KANU Ranks weighing 1.054 kilograms. The 2 men were the lone occupants of the vehicle. They eventually led KANU Ranks to Stone Avenue, Campbellville, where another brick of suspected cocaine and a bag containing bulk parcels of suspected cannabis were found in a yard of an abundant range house. The cocaine weighed 1.048 kilograms and the cannabis totaled 17.956 kilograms. The investigation is ongoing. We tell you now that more than 100,000 persons have received their first of 2 doses of the vaccine, and on Wednesday, the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, during his daily COVID-19 briefing, highlighted that migrants are not being excluded from the vaccination campaign.
Our policy with vaccination right now is to ensure that whoever is in Guyana, and once you're an adult, that you will get a vaccine. So that's what we are working on, because herd immunity cannot be achieved by excluding people. So we know that with the adult population, they're mobile. If they're young, they're mobile. They're, can go to different parts and so forth. And that is why we want to make sure that everyone is immunized. So migrants who are here would certainly get vaccines. Other nationals who are here working in different establishments, once they're here for a protracted period, we'll also be able to give them vaccines.
Now, contractors have failed to live up to the assurances given earlier in April that Hunter Street, one of the main access roads from the east bank of Demerara corridor into Georgetown, would be completed by April 12, 2021. With a new deadline, the road is now expected to be completed by April 28, 2021. Kurt Campbell reports.
Upgrades to Hunter Street, which is one of the main roads connecting the East Bank corridor to Georgetown, has been further delayed. According to the contracting firm Vera 606 Logistic, the delay is not only caused by the prevailing rainy weather, but by an extended work schedule requested by the Ministry of Public Works. The newsroom spoke to Matthew Vera of Vera 606 Logistics by phone this morning, and he gave this update.
Yeah, we had an extension on the contract because of weather, and also we had some extra work that they asked us to conduct with front road. We actually had to break front road and run some pipes on the ground to drain this concrete gutter into the canal. So that was an extra work we had to do. And in front on Mandela, where the other contractor was supposed to do the front of the road from Mandela to come into Hunter Street, we actually had to take that up because the other contractor didn't make it there yet, and they wanted the road to be finished. Currently, I think we'd be finished with this road by either Saturday or early next week.
The drainage issue at the front road has been rectified already, and the company is only left to conduct the paving and proper connecting of Hunter Street to Mandela Avenue. The initial contract for $86.6 million was awarded in May 2019 to Surrey Paving and Ideal Engineering for the geometric improvement of the street, which included raising the level of the road above the drains to prevent flooding and the upgrade of the sidewalks. The works were initially slated to conclude in December 2019. Because of failure to deliver, the contract was terminated in January 2021 and given to Vera 66 Logistics. But while citizens will soon get relief from the completion of Hunter Street, the same cannot be said for the adjoining Sheriff Mandela Road. The contracting firm has already indicated that it may not be able to meet its August 2021 deadline, largely because of setbacks caused by the rainy weather and the movement of utility infrastructure.
A 27-year-old man from Quarantine Berbice is in custody pending police investigations after he allegedly hit his 27-year-old wife and threatened to kill her on April 19. Police headquarters in a statement said the man was consuming alcohol at his home with his brother when he questioned his wife about another man. Reports indicate that the wife remained silent, but the man subsequently grabbed her by her hair and dealt several blows to the head. He then allegedly injured her by pushing his finger in her eye and threatening to kill her. It was noted that the woman sought medical attention at a health center the following day, and after being questioned by a nurse, the matter was reported. Officers went to the home of the suspect and arrested him. Further inquiries also revealed that a month ago, the suspect wounded the woman after he dealt a chop to her hand. The probe into the matter continues. Reports of domestic violence can be made to the 914 hotline or the nearest police station. This is the newsroom. Guyana has secured enough COVID-19 vaccines, both first and second doses, for the current vaccination rollout, even as the procurement discussions with India were stalled following that country's surge in cases and deaths. This is according to the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony.
There have been a lot of cases, a lot of deaths in India, and India has been working to control that, and I'm sure they will. But it is also challenging for India to export vaccines to other countries at this point in time. Our arrangements with them, we continue to negotiate, and if necessary, we'll see where those go. But as of now, Guyana has secured enough vaccine for our program, and but we continue to maintain relationships with other countries to make sure that if there's a need for more, that we can tap into those resources.
A 23-year-old male of Graham Street, Plaisance, East Coast, Demerara, is in police custody after he was reportedly found to be in possession of 2,075 grams of cannabis and several counterfeit local currency. A police report noted that a search was carried out at the suspect's house on Tuesday between 21 hours 50 and 22 hours 30 when ranks discovered 13 transparent plastic parcels, each containing a quantity of leaves, seeds, and stems, along with 17 suspected counterfeit $5,000 bills. The items were taken to the Sparendam police station, where the suspected cannabis was weighed. The suspect was placed into custody pending charges. A 31-year-old boat captain was on Wednesday sentenced to 75 years imprisonment for the murder of Brazilian miner Braz Alves dos Santos, who was killed during a robbery in 2015 at his Peruni Mazaruni mining camp. O'Neill Griffith, formerly of Lagrange, West Bank, Demerara, was sentenced by Justice Navindra Singh at the Essequibo High Court after a jury found him guilty of the charge, which alleged that on December 30, 2015, he shot and killed dos Santos. The state was represented by prosecutor Tiffany Lycan, while Griffith was represented by attorney-at-law Ravindra Mohabir. After listening to the verdict, Griffith addressed the court and reiterated his innocence. Attorney Mohabir, in his plea of mitigation before sentencing, begged the court to temper justice with mercy since his client is a first-time offender. The attorney also asked the court to consider that Griffith is married and is also the father of 2 children. Justice Singh, after considering the nature of the case, sentenced Griffith to serve 75 years imprisonment with the possibility of parole after serving 50 years. He also ordered that the prison authorities deduct the time Griffith spent in pre-trial custody from the sentence. According to police reports, on the day in question, dos Santos was working at a mining camp when Griffith held him and another Brazilian national at gunpoint. It was reported that a scuffle ensued, during which dos Santos was shot to the neck. When the newsroom returns, the financial, weather, and bridge reports along with sports. Welcome back to Newsroom. Now for a look at what's happening in sport. We start things off with some athletics news. Athletes' interest in the 2021 Alien Pompey Invitational is high, according to the founder, Alien Pompey. However, the Invitational is yet to receive the necessary approval from the National COVID-19 Task Force for it to go ahead later this year. The coronavirus pandemic forced the postponement of the leading athletics meet in 2020. However, in January this year, founder of the meet, the 4-time Guyanese Olympian Alien Pompey, said the aim is to have the 2021 event in Guyana on June 19. She pointed out that every attempt would be made to ensure the event satisfies all the safety protocols once the necessary clearance is granted by the relevant authorities. On Wednesday, Pompey shared an update and plans for what would be the 5th edition of the meet.
We have a number of interested athletes and agents that have reached out to us, so I believe that we would fully be able to fill the fields. The issue is that we're still waiting to hear back from the COVID Secretariat. There's a number of issues that were raised, and obviously we want to make sure that this edition of the API is following all protocols, first and foremost for the safety of not just the athletes but the Guyanese public. So we're just awaiting to hear from the COVID Secretariat so we know exactly what the expectations are. And in the meantime, there's just a temporary pause on it, but we're pleased to say that there's enough athletes and there's enough interest that we'll be able to go forward with the meet pending the decision of the COVID Secretariat.
In February 2020, Pompey and World Athletics had announced that the Invitational will be included on the Continental Tour. The inaugural meet hosted 11 athletes who went on to compete at the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio. The tour will span across 6 continents and offers athletes the opportunity to receive world ranking points that will count towards the Olympic Games and World Championship. The Alien Pompey Invitational usually attracts top athletes from Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, and further afield. President of the Athletics Association of Guyana, Aubrey Hudson, says the local organizing committee is moving ahead with plans to host the South American Under-23 Championship later this year, despite the possibility of it being cancelled at the last minute. Akim Green reports.
Guyana is scheduled to host the South American Under-23 Championships from October 8th to the 9th, and AAG are pouring ahead with their planning amidst uncertainty on whether the event will be cancelled.
On the phone with the president of Consudadle, we were having very, very good discussion on the future track and field in South America, especially for the rest of 2020, because the governmental protocols as it relates to COVID-19 continue to change. South American seniors that is supposed to be in Buenos Aires from the 14th to the 16th of May. What happens if the Argentine government say anybody coming from Brazil must be quarantined for 2 weeks before they could go out into the public? That in itself will throw a serious monkey wrench into the whole operations and how we function. So we continue to prepare as though things are gonna get normal, but expect at any point in time a last minute call to say, hey, sorry, we can't host anymore because of these prevailing conditions. So that's our mindset. We are moving ahead with South American Under 23 to be held there.
Hudson said they hope to soon meet the sport minister again to discuss remedial works at a synthetic track at Leonora.
It's the same LOC that is planning for Carifta. We meet every Monday night via Zoom, and we're trying to put as much as we possibly could in place. I know we would have written the minister recently requesting another meeting because we think it's too long a gap between when we last met, just to bring us up to speed on what's going on at Leonora. And but all in sundry, I think we will do well in terms of the planning and organizing.
Additionally, the AG had said it's important that they also feel a quality team to compete at the championships should it be staged, and they also develop athletes for the non-conventional events.
From the administrative part of the AG, however, we need to do some work on making sure that our team is ready for these championships. It doesn't make sense hosting and you're not quite prepared in terms of your athletes being on the track, an athlete in every event. And there are many events that we don't generally do. The race walk, we don't put people into it. Pole vault, we've introduced steeplechase to a certain extent. The hammer, those are not traditional events that we were doing in Guyana, and we need to start reintroducing them so that we can have an athlete in every event.
In 2022, Guyana is also slated to host the Carifta Track and Field Championships. For the Newsroom, Akim Green.
The Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, Charles Ramson Jr., has indicated to the Newsroom that he's happy about the elections at the Guyana Cricket Board, which paves the way for the sport to move forward. On March 29, the Guyana Cricket Board held its election under the guidance of the appointed Ombudsman Kamal Ramkaran, in which the longtime administrator Bisundayal Singh became the president.
It's something that shouldn't have happened in the first place. I was almost a bystander before coming into office, and to see that there had been all this turmoil, a lot of trauma, a lot of discord that was happening in the sport, the administration of the sport, which has a reverberating effect towards how many people want to be involved in sport administration. Also, the talent that's involved, because young people would feel more confident in a sport that is administered well, and that they're clear about. There's a lot of transparency and accountability in the process. So people have those expectations of governments, but they also need to have the same kind of expectations of sports associations, and the government has been trying to press on that as well, because that good management imbues a lot of confidence in the sport, and in turn it imbues a lot of talent. So we were very pleased to see that the election occurred. The bottom line is that for any sport to see that it grows and prosper, there needs to be order and confidence and integrity and transparency and accountability. Those words are not just buzzwords. They're meaningful, and they have a very impactful way in how young people are involved in sport, and their willingness to be involved in it, and how it is that they also advance their talents. So I was very pleased to see that has happened.
Football news now. President of the Guyana Football Federation, Wayne Ford, has added his voice to the proposed European Super League, labeling it an aberration. He argued that the commercial side of the game is not a reflection of the true spirit of football. Ford said, and I quote, "Based on the information in my possession, the Super League would be a grave tipping point for the order and structure of global football," end quote. Premier League clubs Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United and Tottenham were initially announced as part of the proposed league, with the other clubs being AC Milan, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Inter Milan, Juventus and Real Madrid. However, on Wednesday morning, Juventus chairman Andrea Agnelli said the league project cannot proceed as AC Milan, Inter Milan and Atletico Madrid joined the 6 Premier League clubs in withdrawing. Ford said while football as an entertainment product has been skillfully commercialized over the past decades, he argued strongly that the commercial side of the game is not a reflection of the true spirit of football. He said, and I quote, "Until the number of paid persons across the globe overtakes the number of volunteers sacrificing each day and night to develop the beautiful game, then football must remain a game of the ordinary man and woman whose passion has fueled its continued existence for centuries. If the authors of this sinister plot to erode the foundation of the game was to succeed in launching this aberration, I am convinced that their success will be short-lived. The fans will have the final say." End quote. FIFA boss Gianni Infantino strongly disapproves of the breakaway European Super League and says the 12 clubs will have to live with the consequences of their decision to join. He said, and I quote, "It is our task to protect the European sport model. If some elect to go their own way, they must live with the consequences of their choices. They are responsible for their choice completely. This means you're either in or you're out. You cannot be half in and half out." End quote. IPL news now. 3-time champions Chennai Super Kings moved to the top of the IPL table with an 18-run victory over Kolkata Knight Riders. Chennai made 220 for 3 from their 20 overs, with Faf du Plessis making an unbeaten 95 and Ruturaj Gaikwad 64. Kolkata then slumped to 31 for 5, with Deepak Chahar taking 4 for 29 from 4 overs. They recovered to leave 28 needed of the last 2 overs, with Andre Russell making a 21-ball 50, Dinesh Karthik 40 and Pat Cummins 66 not out, but Chennai hung on to record their 3rd win from 4 games. And Johnny Bairstow's unbeaten 63 led Sunrisers Hyderabad to their first win of the 2021 Indian Premier League with a 9-wicket victory over Punjab Kings. Bairstow put on 73 with David Warner, who made 37, and 48 with Kane Williamson, who ended on 16 as his side won with 8 balls to spare. Punjab were bowled out for 120 in 19.4 overs, with Mayank Agarwal and Shah Rukh Khan top scoring with 22 apiece. Khalil Ahmed was the pick of the Sunrisers bowlers, taking 3 for 21. And finally, Bangladesh were in control at stumps on day 1 of the first test against Sri Lanka in Palakkale. Winning the toss and electing to bat, Bangladesh ended the day on an imposing 302 for 2, an effort led by a maiden test 100 from Najmul Shanto. The left-hander closed the day on 126 and has so far featured in an unbroken 3rd wicket stand of 150 with Mominul Haq, who is not out on 64. Opener Tamim Iqbal earlier missed out on 100, making 90, while fellow opener Saif Hassan fell without scoring. And with that, we've come to the end of the news for this evening. Of course, you can find updates on these and other stories on our website, Newsroom.gy, our Facebook page and Instagram. On behalf of the entire news team, my name is Avinash Ramzan. Thanks for watching. Be safe. See you next time.